Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Last Life Ever podcast. I'm Jillian Sidoti, and this is Jeffrey Holst, my partner in crime, my raison d'etre. I think my husband would be upset if I told him you were my raison d'etre.
I mean, you literally just said it.
I know.
Hopefully he's not watching. We have like 4 people watching live.
My children probably are also upset.
Oh, well, they'll get over it. But anyway, Jillian, I'm honored. I really am. I don't speak whatever language that was, so I have no idea what you're talking about. Our guest, however, speaks another language. Why don't you tell us about that?
He speaks Welsh, and he is from Wales.
Not Scotland, are you sure?
No, stop. Stop. So listen, we are going to be talking to Barri Griffiths, who is also known as Mason Ryan, professional wrestler with the WWE. And Jeff actually met Mason first, or Barri first. And
well, both. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? He's also the lead archer in Ka.
Yeah.
Ka. So anyway, Listen, we could tell you all about him, but it would be way better if we just let you hear from our guest himself.
Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
So great to have you here, Barri.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here.
So, Jillian, you've been friends with Barri for minutes now. Are you also excited to be here, Jillian?
I'm always excited to be here, Jeff.
Great.
How dare you?
Great. So, Barri, before we came on here, we were talking just briefly about your career. So, we wanted to have you on because, as the audience already knows, we're looking for people that are living extraordinary lives, doing interesting things. And I met you not that long ago because you're doing a real estate podcast, which is great. And we were talking sort of about your background. And I found out that you were a WWE wrestler. And I was like, man, I need to have this guy on because I don't know The Rock. So I figured I'd call you instead.
You're a terrible person.
I really am terrible. Wait, do you know The Rock? Can we just cancel the interview now? And
stop! Oh my God!
You actually FaceTimed me earlier. Do you want me to get him on now? I can get him on.
Yeah.
He's busy.
All right. Well, we're gonna stick with you then. So, are you allowed to say what your stage name was, or is that like confidential?
Yeah, no, my stage name was Mason Ryan, which isn't very wrestling actually. The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Mason Ryan. It isn't quite the same.
Did you come up with your own name?
Yeah, that was a process in itself. So what happened was when I started wrestling, tell me if you want more of a backstory or anything like that, but when I started wrestling, UFC was just exploding. So Vince McMahon, the owner of wrestling, decided that he wanted people to have ordinary names because UFC fighters at the time, they had ordinary names. Now, since they have all kinds of crazy names since then, but the UFC fighters. But so he wanted an ordinary name, so you couldn't come up with any crazy thing like that sounds awesome or sounds really interesting. So I had to come
like
up
the
with
sledgehammer or something.
Yeah, or anything like that. Yeah, like anything normal. You had to come up with just a normal name per se. So I was like, oh, okay, this is not what I thought about wrestling when I was thinking about wrestling names.
So why didn't you go with Barri then? Because that's kind of a normal name.
But they want it. You can't use your own name because they're going to have the rights to it. So they have the rights.
This is actually why I never got into wrestling because I didn't want to. I would be too confusing to have more than one name.
Well, yeah.
That's why you didn't get into wrestling, Jeff?
That's one of the reasons. Jillian actually has a wrestling name. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. But
yeah, she does. You got to hear this, Jillian. I know I told you I wasn't going to bring this up, but go ahead.
My wrestling name is the $1 Jillion Girl. My theme song is Money by Pink Floyd. And my finishing move is the counterfeit press, where I wrap my legs around my opponent and squeeze real hard.
That's amazing. I didn't even know you had a move.
Yeah, no, I've thought this out for a really long time. and I would not join wrestling if I couldn't have like a fake name. And I would totally be a bad guy. Yeah, I'm basing myself on Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man. I would kind of be like his nemesis, but we'd still both be bad guys. I've thought this out a little bit.
How many sleepless nights have you spent thinking about this?
Okay, let me just put it this way. I programmed Alexa in my house. So when I told my kids this story that I was a professional wrestler and they said, "We don't believe you, show us videos on YouTube," I said, "This was a long time ago, guys. I'm pretty old." And their response was, "Well, you need to prove to us that you're a wrestler." And so I would say, "Alexa, who's the $1 Jillion Girl?" And Alexa would answer, "The $1 Jillion Girl is a 42-year-old woman from Temecula, California named Jillian Sidoti." And that's how I proved to them that I was a professional wrestler.
So do they believe you to this day?
No. Since then, they've kind of wised up and realized that their mom lies to them a lot.
Do they have trust issues now?
Very much so. They think everything. But I will say this. Will say this. The minute they got like a hint that Santa Claus wasn't real. Oh, sorry to any little kids who are listening. But the minute they got a hint that Santa Claus might not be, what they thought it was, I didn't hold on to that. I didn't like go, "But you gotta believe." So
wait. Santa Claus isn't real.
Okay, all right. This is not about me and my wrestling career. This is about Barry and his wrestling career.
That's because you didn't have a wrestling career. All right,
so I have
Barry,
a lot of questions because I was, as a kid, as you probably can tell, I was obsessed with WWF at the time, and then it changed to WWE. And I'm just fascinated because you're from Scotland or Wales?
Whoa, Wales.
Sorry, Wales.
I'll forgive you. You didn't say England. That's the main part.
No, and I know you speak fluent Welsh, right?
Yes.
Very cool. So how, did they have professional wrestling is there like European professional wrestling, and what made you want to come to the United States?
Yeah, it's kind of a random thing. So what happened with me was I was weightlifting a lot. I used to be a soccer player, crazy about soccer. But I used to be skinny until I was about 19, 20. I used to play soccer all day, every day, run for miles, and I was super fit. Then I blew out my knee. So when I blew out my knee, I had all this energy for use to training. I was going to the gym every day, twice a day, eating healthy. And I created a physique, and I was like, I'm training like a professional here. Let me try and do something. What can I do with my physique? And I stumbled across wrestling. So I went to a local wrestling show. It was so funny. It was in a field. The ring was like lopsided. They had the chandelier as the lighting. Like the wrestlers would walk in, they'd have to wipe their feet before they got in the ring because it was so muddy. It was like a real professional like setup. Oh God, here we go.
You were very skinny. I'm sorry. This is not skinny.
No, but that was later. That was.
By the way, just to be clear, I actually didn't mean to share my screen. I was going to share that later, but I hit the wrong button. So there you go. I blew the surprise.
Yeah.
So you went to this field and everybody's wiping their feet before they get into the lopsided ring, and then what happened?
Yeah, and I met with the promoter. So I actually had a plan when I was going. I was like, I want to be a wrestler, but where I'm from, wrestling isn't cool. Like here, wrestling is cool, right? It's like cool to be a wrestler. Like you tell someone you're a wrestler, like, oh my God, that's amazing. You tell someone back home that you're a wrestler, like, oh, you do that thing in your underpants with other guys. It really isn't that cool. So I was like undercover going to try.
That's how we feel about soccer here.
I've noticed. Probably rightly so, but that's another subject. So anyway, I go to this event secretly trying to meet the promoter, trying to get into wrestling. But I take my friend's son with me. I'm like, oh, let's take your son to wrestling. He'll love wrestling. I'm not telling him the truth. So we go there. My friends get drunk. I'm sober. And they end up talking to the promoter. They kind of make an ass of themselves, but I end up talking to him. So it turns out this promoter was kind of like a legendary guy in Wales. He'd been promoting wrestling for 30 years, and he was just like super old school. And he became my mentor, the guy who did everything for me. And so let me tell you a little bit about him because that's interesting itself. This guy's his wrestling career started on the fairs. He would do traveling fairs all over Europe. And what they would do is they had a boxing ring and a wrestling ring. It was the same ring, but they would have challenges. So they would challenge people from the audience. They say, if you can go 5 rounds with our boxer, you can make whatever, £5 or whatever it was at the time. And they would go all over Europe, Sweden, all this, but they were carny, right? They were like,
carnies.
Yeah, they didn't want anything straight, right? They wanted everything to be in the favor of it. So he used to tell me all these stories that what they would do is there was a hole in the corner of the ring, and the boxer would shadow the guy into the hole until he slipped in the hole. And bang, they would knock him out. Or if the guy was going, or they would control the time as well. So if the time was like supposed to be 5 minutes, if the boxer was on top, might be 7, 8, 9 minutes, because they hadn't iPhones. Nobody had a watch or anything back then. This is like 40, 50, 60 years ago. So the round would go 7 minutes, but if the challenger was on top, the round may only last 2 minutes. And then another thing they would do is that this is pretty bad, but this shows you the character of the guy that mentored me. He maybe shows you who I am, maybe I don't know. But they would have gloves, and the gloves used to be made of horsehair. And what you could do is if you slit the glove with a little slit with a knife in it, it used to be like glass. So if you slightly touched someone, you would just rip them right open. So this was the guy, and he said that their ring was set up between the Ring of Fire, so the guys going through the Ring of Fire on the motorcycles, and the burlesque show. So this was his education. This is how this guy grew up. This was my mentor. And he said he started going out and claiming money from the people. So they would have this, so wherever they would go, they would be somewhere in Stockholm, saying, they said, oh, we have this poor little orphan boy that's here today. He's it sounds terrible, right, when I'm telling you, but this shows you. It
doesn't sound terrible. It is terrible.
Well, it is, but he was such a character. So his job was to go around collecting money, being like, well, we have an orphan boy here with us today. We found him on the streets. Unfortunately, we were stuck for money, but can you guys give money for this guy? And he would go around collecting money, and that's how this guy started. So can you imagine like the character that this guy was? Anyway, sorry, I digress. But I think that's
just delightful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was a great guy, believe it or not, but it shows you the career he had. So anyway, I started wrestling with him, and he kind of taught me, and I kind of learned some tricks of the trade and whatnot, what it was. So I started wrestling in Wales and in the UK, but it's so small time. You're talking 300-400 people, no TV, very unglamorous. But I started wrestling there, and at the time I was working for my dad as a carpenter and an undertaker. So that's another story there. If you want me to dive into that slightly, let me know.
I kind of do, actually.
Okay, well, let me tell you how I got to the US, and then I'll dive back into that. So I was wrestling in the UK, and I was just doing it for fun. I was like, okay, this is blah, blah, blah. So I was traveling a lot, ended up going full-time, leaving my dad's job, blah, blah, blah. But I was doing it 7, 8 times a week, traveling all over the UK, occasionally going to Europe, but making no money. But, I knew of WWE, of course, so it was kind of like, okay, maybe one day I can make it there. So one of the guys that wrestles, one of the old-timers, he was actually a scout for WWE, and he kept trying to get me to go to the tryouts because he knew they signed me. They had a look at the time. They was like 6'6", 280 pounds. It was like what they signed all day, every day. If they printed people, they would probably put a print in me at the time. So he eventually got his way because I was like, okay, I want experience. You don't get a second chance to make a first experience. I want to learn more, travel to Europe. It was fun going over the UK, making no money, but having fun at the same time. I went to the tryout. Literally was at the tryout 5 minutes, didn't wrestle, and the guy offered to sign me. I was like, okay, cool. And then, so they had a wrestling school in Tampa, Florida. So that's where you go. So they want to teach you their way of wrestling. There's a million different ways of wrestling, but they want to teach you their way and teach you how to do it.
I feel like I saw this movie.
So then I flew to Tampa, Florida. And I was a small town boy from the middle of nowhere. Imagine flying to Tampa, Florida, going to the beaches and being like, what is this? When I was like 28, single, and in shape, I guess. So going back, I don't know if you guys want to jump in and ask me questions. So
keep going. This is awesome.
It's so much easier when guests interview themselves.
So my dad owned a business with his brother, a construction business, but that was also, they had undertaking. So the business is I come from a tiny small town. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. Here people says, I'm from a small town, 20,000 people. I'm like, are you insane? 20,000 is massive. So there's like 200 people where I live. Literally
200.
200 people, yeah.
How close was the closest city?
What do you class as city? Probably 2 hours, maybe 2 hours.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
yeah,
So
so I
you're
was-
and like was it like farmland? What was
Right,
the
yeah, there's a
label?
lot of agriculture around that area.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so we grow. So it's a tiny little town in Wales. So I don't know if you know about the Wales. We like to drink a lot. So that in my tiny little town, right? No stoplight, one post office, one fish and chip shop, one small grocery store, my dad's business, and 3 pubs.
Okay, so three pubs for 200 people. That's rich. But let me back up for a second because Jeff told me you don't drink. Is that correct?
Yeah, but there's a reason behind that. I just have a bad. I've drunk my fair share. If I never drink another drop of alcohol, I've done my fair share. But I have a bad reaction to it now. I can drink one tiny shot, and that was what happened. I drank a tiny shot. Probably at the start of the year, it made me sick for 4 days. I was like, all right, I'm done. I can never drink alcohol.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know if I processed.
Okay, so well, tell us how you got into being an Undertaker.
So what happened? Okay, so it's a small town. My great granddad started the business probably close to 100 years ago now. So he started the business with a partner. It's called Pritchard and Griffiths. He was the Griffiths. There was a Pritchard in it. The Pritchard guy died. He didn't have any kids. They bought the business but kept the name. So he started, but they were starting woodwork. So they did the wheels for the horse and carriages. So this shows you how far they go. They used to make the wheels for the horse and carriages. So they did. But because they were involved in woodwork, they made the coffins as well. So when you make the coffins back then, it makes sense that you're the Undertaker as well. Because if you're making the coffins, it would make sense that you're the Undertaker. So they started a business, Undertakers, making horse carriages, making coffins. So he passed it on down to my granddad. My granddad passed it on to his two sons, my dad and his brother. And then I was supposed to take it over with my cousin. But here I am in Las Vegas, Nevada, working for the circus.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that yet, what you're doing now, right? But so, and we'll get to that in a second, but did that create any hardship for you with your family, leaving the family business?
Tough, right? It was tough. I ended up working the business, but it was one of those cases where I didn't know what else to do, right? From an early age, I never wanted to work in a business because everyone was asking me, when are you going to go in the business? When are you going to be this? When are you going to take over the business? And, as a kid, you kind of rebel, right? If someone's telling you to do something all the time, you kind of rebel. You don't want it, right? It's that challenge with kids of, I want my kids to be in real estate investing, but how do I navigate that and get them into real estate investing? So I always didn't want it. I ended up in the business. I worked as a carpenter. I was probably the worst carpenter in the history of carpentry, right? I was horrible because I hated it. Every second, I absolutely hated it. But the undertaking, I actually didn't mind, right? Didn't like people dying, of course, but where I'm from, it's like, it was like a lot of elderly people, right? And it's just kind of like, okay, life, it is what it is, right? Life has to end sometime. And if they're in their 80s, it's a lot more easy to accept than if you're burying a 30-year-old or something. But it,
for sure,
you provide a service, right? Undertaking. And my dad is amazing at it. My dad is an absolute amazing undertaker because he treats each funeral like a different one. And he's so compassionate with these people. And people absolutely adore my dad where he's from because he's so good at it. He's amazing. So, what was the question?
Oh, well, it doesn't matter. So you were doing that. You decided to step away from the family business and join the circus. Tell us about that.
I remember your question. So it did cause hardship. Sorry, the question was about hardship. Yeah, but when my granddad took over the business when he was 50. His dad unexpectedly died, and he had no experience in the business. So he fought tooth and nail to keep this business alive. He was by himself. He grew the business, fought tooth and nail. So obviously he wanted. Well, my dad did take it over and wanted me to take it over and to know that what he'd worked for all this time had been passed on. So when I would go visit him after I came over here, he would always ask, when are you going to come back? Because obviously to wrestling to them, he didn't understand that I could be a millionaire being a wrestler. I didn't turn out to be, but it's possible. Look at John Cena and The Rock and all this. But he would always ask me, when are you coming back to run the business? And like, he was almost like, he would ask almost like, when are you done playing around with that stupid wrestling thing to come back? And that was, I'll be honest, that was really tough for me. My dad's never asked me or anything like that, but to him, and because I understood where he came from, I understood that, he'd fought so hard to keep this business going, and it meant a lot to him that the business kept going, and that really did tug on my heartstring because he was in a home at the time, and at the time he knew he probably didn't have that many years left, so that was always really hard when I went back home for that.
I'm sorry that.
It is what it is, right? It was my choice. I could have gone back, but it was.
No, but it's hard to hear that, right? It's always it's always hard to hear what our parents expect of us and then going off and doing something else. But let's so you came to the United States, and then how did you get, because you auditioned basically, right, for WWE?
Yeah, to some extent, right? Not to sound, hopefully this doesn't come across as arrogant, but I was lucky that it worked for me and worked against me that I had this look, the way I looked, right? It was 6'6", 280 pounds. I was always in shape, always tanned. When I used some fake tan, maybe occasionally. But always, appearances.
So you're saying you looked the part?
Yeah,
right? That's really what you're saying. So it wasn't too hard. I think
what they wanted as well. They had at the time, it's changed a lot since, but at the time they had a certain model that they really wanted, and a model, I mean like
a certain look that they wanted.
Yeah, exactly. So I literally went to the tryouts, and I didn't even have to wrestle. All these other people, and it's lucky, right? But all these other people, they had to go in the ring and wrestle 5 matches, and I literally got there, and the guy that signs the talent took one look at me and took me into the office and said, "Hey, we'd like to offer you a contract." So I was like, "Oh, okay."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got into, that was WWE. Was that? Yeah. Okay. So you got into WWE, and then did you start performing live on TV right away, or was it a process?
No, it's a process. So as I mentioned, they have a training school in Tampa. It's now moved to Orlando. So what they do is they mold you into the wrestler that they wanted to be. So they want you to wrestle a certain style. They want you to do certain things. Everyone does it the same, and
like whether you're supposed to be a cheater or not. Like, are you supposed to use a metal chair or?
Yeah, and each match has, so often each match has a basic story. Right? There's a good guy, there's the bad guy. The bad guy cheats. The good guy's the good guy. He'll fight till the end, and he never gives up. The cheater just always tries to. The bad guy always tries to cheat. Right? He's trying to do everything he can to win in the wrong way. So you like the good guy, you hate the bad guy. It's kind of that story, right, over and over again. So they're trying to teach you that, and it's more complicated than that, right? So there's an art form to wrestling that people don't understand, that probably don't have time to get into, but maybe another time.
Right. Well, but I mean, it's a performance, right? I mean, you're learning a certain skill set so that you can put on a show for the people that are watching both live and on TV. And so you got through that. How long was that training school?
Well, it varies. So what happens is you go to this training school, when they think that you're ready, that they want you for TV, they call you up, and then you get called.
So for you, that was like another 5 minutes or something, since you got in 5 minutes?
It was a year, because my wrestling skills weren't that good when I went there. And maybe they weren't that good when I went on TV, but I had that look. And what happened was I started you'd go to live events, not to TV, to live events to gain experience. And someone said, "Don't let Vince see you yet. Whatever you do," Vince McMahon, the owner of the company, "whatever you do, don't let Vince McMahon see you yet, because you're not ready. And once he sees you, he's going to want you on TV, and it's not going to be good for you." Well, I guess Vince McMahon saw me, and in I got there January 2010, and in January of 2011, ended up on TV.
So one year, and then how long did you end up wrestling on TV?
Probably a year and a half, solidly.
Okay. So 2011 to like 2013-ish.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And then since then, what have you been doing? Because I mean, obviously you haven't been doing that.
No. Well, wait, hold on. I want to know how it ended. Like,
okay, all right. Let's hear that.
Yeah.
Good call.
What happened?
So I was wrestling. So I got on TV. I was involved in some main events on Raw. Did some. How many pay-per-views did I? I think I did 3 or 4 pay-per-views in big time. Wrestled at Madison Square Garden. Traveled all over the world. Did some trips in Europe. Went to South America. Went to Japan. Did a lot of really cool stuff. Made some money. Had some. And traveled to every city in the US. I couldn't even tell you where I went, because it would all be the same: airport, gym, arena. It's the same thing over and over. The hotel. That's all you would really see. But then, as things change, and a lot of it's about luck, right? Being in the right place at the right time. So sometimes I was in the right place at the right time, but at the end, it didn't really work out like that, right? The storylines didn't work for me. Whatever, it just didn't go that way, right? It's it could have been different, but life is like that, right? You can't look back and wish things were different, because things have worked out amazingly for me. So in 2014, so I was off TV for maybe a year or so, a year and a half. I ended up they didn't renew my contract, so I ended up like, okay, now what do I do? You know, I have no skills really apart from wrestling. So where do I go from here? That was a challenging time. So if you want me to talk about that, because I bought a house in January of 2014, and then in April of 2014, I got let go, and I had this massive for me. It was $2,600 a month mortgage payment that I had that, and it was like,
No, that's a big mortgage payment.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah,
So-
that's a lot. That's stressful. So what did you, I mean, and did you not, was that like totally unexpected? Like you couldn't.
Yes, completely.
Oh.
I went into work one day and I was like, they told me, I was like, because I always thought that I was going to be the champion, to be honest with you. Rightly or wrongly, I always thought that I was going to be the world heavyweight champion, a WWE champion.
Did they give you a reason why? Did they tell you, or they were just like, sorry, we'll see you later?
They kind of gave me a reason, but yeah,
That's good.
That's good enough. So anyway,
I wasn't mad. I was disappointed, yes, but it was, wrestling is like that, right? It's a business. It's entertainment. It's you just. It is what it is, right? I don't know. I wish I could explain it better. I was heartbroken, of course. You know, it was going to be my dream. I was going to be heavyweight champion. I was going to do this for the next 20 years, blah, blah, blah. But I understood their position. You know, it just, things didn't work out for me and for them and on TV and stuff like that, you know. And it's just, sometimes that's the case, right? It just doesn't work out. And what can you do, right?
Nothing. You move on, right?
Yeah. So go ahead, Jillian.
No. Please.
Okay. So, all right. So, it didn't work out. I want to transition just for 1 second because I read something in your Wikipedia page, which, by the way, awesome. You have a Wikipedia page. It said that you are a former world record holder. What can you tell us about that? I want to hear about world record right now.
So should I make it sound awesome or should I tell you the truth?
You should make it sound awesome first and then burst the bubble.
Okay. So I have a Guinness World Record for a feat of strength that also took me to China, where I even broke my own world record, and I got to go to China for.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, funny story about the China thing. So they fly me to China. So I was a gladiator as well. I did UK gladiators. We skipped that part. I forgot about that part. Sorry. So I did UK gladiators. You know, like USA gladiators, where I was one of the gladiators. I was Gladiator Goliath. So, but anyway, so while doing that, we had our own agent. Our agent got me a gig doing the feat of strength to start off with, then sending me to China. So went to China by myself. I'm in this hotel and I'm like, what should I do? The night before, I'm supposed to do the feat of strength the next day. Of course, I go to a bar in wherever I was. Where was I? I can't remember. I go to the downtown area. At 2 a.m. in the morning, I'm doing the Congo line with all these Chinese people drinking sake.
And you're like 1.5 feet taller than that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've been to China and I'm not 6'6". I think that's what you said, right? 6'6".
Yeah.
I'm not 6'6". I'm like 5'10", and I was taller than most everyone I met.
That's a funny visual for me. Like all these small people. Anyway, the next day I went and broke my record and did the thing, and they were like, "Oh."
Yeah. So Frank, so you're the strongest man in the world.
Not quite. So what? The truth of the story was that they had this show in the UK, Guinness World Records, and they wanted to get 2 gladiators on, and they wanted to make it interesting. So they created this record that it didn't exist before. So it was me against this other guy. I was way stronger than the other guy. So all it was holding a 20-pound weight out in front of me, and they put it in a handbag to make it seem interesting. I was always going to beat the other guy because I was way bigger, way stronger than him, and then now I hold the record and I got to go to China with it. So and
then you beat the record. So it's 20 kilograms, right? That's what it was. So it's more than 20 pounds, right?
So what happened the first time around? I'm sorry if we're going off topic or whatever.
No, it's totally fine.
We're both holding it like this, and I know I'm stronger than the other guy, right? But so the guy drops in. I'm like, I don't really want to just drop it now. So it's like going. And then 5 seconds later, I dropped it. So I could have gone on another 30 seconds. So when I went to China, I already knew I was going to beat that. But then you got to put on a show. So then I'm in China, and then I see they show my record on the thing, and they show the time. And as I'm getting closer, I'm shaking again. I'm like,
so
and then it's about 2 seconds, and I drop it again because in case I needed to break it another time, you know.
So do you think you could break it now? Like, can we get you on to break the world record like in a couple of weeks? Can you just get in that shape again, and we can do a new world record right here on Last Life Ever?
Yeah, probably. You'd have to get a Guinness World Record person because they have to.
That's fine. We'll figure it out. We'll get it set up. I'm going to work on that. We're going to do that. It'll probably be you got to start training though, because I want you to break it by 3 seconds.
Okay.
3, not 1, 3.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
How much
All
money?
right. So, all right. That's really cool. So that's pretty fun. I actually have a secret desire to have a Guinness Book World Record. Like, I don't know what in, but I'm going to think of something like, I don't know, eating an egg the fastest or something.
Yeah.
The problem is there's so many of them and there's so many ridiculous categories. It's really hard to figure out which one to do. And then they have ones they don't do anymore. And then you have to be on TV or you have to have a moderator, like you were saying. So I have to figure that out. But maybe we'll make a Jillian and Jeff world record at the same time we do yours.
Oh, okay. I still have so many questions, and we're going to go over, and I hope that's okay with you, Barry, if you'll stay with us for a few more minutes. Because then after you did WWE, and so you're looking down, you're like, oh my God, I have this mortgage. I actually want to get into that a little bit because I think a lot of our listeners know that feeling of like, I just made this huge financial decision and now you're ripping the rug out from underneath me. What did you do next?
Apart from panic. I had to scramble. I scrambled. So, with wrestling, you do have some options, right? WWE is the main player, but, you can travel a lot. So I went to the UK, went to Japan, scrambled all over the US, reached out. So I really put myself out there. I reached out to all these promoters. So I wrestled a lot independently. So the independent wrestling scene, how it works very quickly is that every weekend, there's probably 4 or 5 or more shows all over the country, but they're run by independent promoters. So if you want to wrestle every week of the year once, you have to reach out to 52 different wrestling promoters because they usually do one show a year. That's it, and they're small time, and they're trying to be Vince McMahon, and no offense to anyone who's that's cool, but they're trying to be Vince McMahon, so you have to deal with that. So I would be writing to tons and tons and tons of promoters, just trying to do whatever it took to keep myself afloat and figure out, if I wanted to sell a house. Because the other thing was as well, I loved the house. The house was awesome. It was on a bay type thing that went out to the sea, and every morning I wake up, the sunrise, you see the sunrise and the water, and it was amazing. So I was like, God, I just bought this house. I'm probably can only sell it for what I bought it for. I'm going to lose money with it when you add in the commissions and whatnot and the closing costs. And I don't want to sell it. So I just, so I had to make that decision then to scramble and to just do whatever it took, right? And at the same time, I didn't want to go do anything else because I still thought maybe I could make it back to WWE through wrestling. So I was like, all right. So I scrambled. I did everything I could. I wrestled wherever I could for sometimes not much money, sold merchandise, sold autographs, did all this stuff, went on podcasts, as many wrestling podcasts, to put myself out there as much as I could, and just try to scramble and, network with people that, were doing what I kind of wanted to do.
Wow. No, that's really cool. So, but then you got into Cirque du Soleil, and how did you get into that? Because that sounds like not a huge departure. It's very athletic, right? But it's different. It's certainly not wrestling. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, that was random in itself. And I just noticed my name. So for people see Barry 10 foot, that's what my friends back home used to call me, Barry 10 foot. Anyway, so with Cirque du Soleil, what happened was I was wrestling in the UK. So I'd gone to the UK for a whole summer pretty much, where, again, I was kind of scrambling, trying to make money, make everything happen. I was wrestling 10 times a week. So we would do 3 shows on a Sunday. So it was pretty brutal, but it was fun at the same time. But yeah, it was pretty brutal, 3 times on a Sunday. So I was in the UK, and I got a message from WWE. Hey, we've got a job opportunity for you. Are you interested? I'm like, oh, maybe WWE want me back. That's kind of cool. It's been pretty quick. Okay, cool. So I reached out to them, and they were like, hey, Cirque du Soleil are looking for a wrestler type of person to fill a role that they have in one of their shows. I was like, are you interested? It's like, I don't know. Am I interested? I didn't know. At the time, I didn't know so much about Cirque du Soleil, to be honest with you. I'd kind of seen some clips. So I was like, yeah, I'm interested. So they put me in touch. I reached out to them, and they were like, hey, we're doing auditions on August 17th or something like that. I was like, oh, I'm still going to be in the UK. I can't make it. So luckily, they pushed it back another week. And literally, I flew back on the Friday, got my stuff, flew to Vegas, and did the audition the next day. And there was 3 other wrestlers that I knew as well at the time that were doing the audition. So there was 4 wrestlers, 4 of us knew each other, because it was funny. We were waiting outside the theater, and one of my friends comes up, and I'm like, hey, what's up? Hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Are you here for the? No, I'm not here for the. Wait, are you? And then
Okay, so it was you.
Like, wait, are you here for that? You're not here for that. Wait, are we all here for the same thing? So we ended up doing.
Are you Rock and John Cena out for this part then?
Yes.
Yeah. Just to be clear.
And Hulk Hogan.
Oh yeah, Hulk Hogan. He was a little on the old side for your part.
So it was completely random. Like at the time, I knew nothing about Cirque du Soleil. I didn't understand anything about it. To be honest, I knew that it was very acrobatical, very acrobatical. I guess is the right word. Which I'm not. Right, I'm completely not. I was a wrestler, kind of athletic for my size, but apart from
did you have to learn to do cartwheels?
No, thankfully, no. So luckily, the show that I'm in is called Kai. It's like an Asian-based theme, and it has a lot of storylines to it. But there's a lot of, excuse me, mixed martial arts, and there's a lot of choreographed fight scenes. So that's where I come in. I'm the bad guy that does some choreographed fight scenes. So it was like, okay, I could do this. Meanwhile, all the other guys that are in the show are like doing crazy flips and all this insane athletic ability stuff. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So how long have you been doing Ka?
I joined in December of 2015. So
okay, so 5 years now.
Yeah, we stopped in March of this year, but yeah.
Yeah, right. So how's that going? I mean, that's got to be challenging too, right? So first you go through this period of time where you're fighting to get back into wrestling, and then you get into Ka, and I'm assuming you like it, or you wouldn't still be there. And now you can't do that.
Yeah, it was a little bit deja vu, but not quite, because that's what you talked. I think you talked about that. We met through a real estate investing interview platform that I have. That I got into real estate investing early on when I got to Vegas, because since that happened to me in 2014 with my house and stuff like that, and just my job getting the rug getting pulled from underneath me, I was like, okay, I need a plan B. I need something else. Okay, entertainment's great to be in. It's a fun job. I love it, but you can't rely on it, because at any point it can come to an end. So that's how I got through to real estate investing. So now, fast forward to whenever the pandemic hit this year, I had some real estate income that I could rely on, and also I'm looking to grow that as well. So that was something that I knew was going to keep me afloat. But also we had the unemployment, right? Some people be making more money than they were before. Not necessarily the case with me, but I had that for. Plus, I didn't lose my job. It was just hopefully we're looking to start back probably next year. So it's more of a furlough than a job. But at the same time, it did have that little bit of, oh God, here we go again, But thankfully through real estate, that I knew that I'm going to be okay.
So Jillian was just in Vegas a few weeks ago, right? Jillian,
Yeah.
And she said it was really, really dead. So is it real bad there? I mean, is it still like that?
I think so. Well, I live in the suburbs. I live like 15, 20 minutes outside of the strip.
So you don't go down. You don't go down there because you're like, I don't need
that's
to.
That's the joke about Vegas. If you're a local here, you avoid the strip like it's the plague, right? Well,
literally the plague. You literally are avoiding the plague right now.
Yeah. Where did you stay? Where did you?
We went to Wynn, and they were like the mask police. Like everybody at the Wynn is a mask and social distancing police. I really, really appreciated that personally, because I had my kids there and stuff. But they had some really serious safety measures in place. But I will tell you, I saw a lot of dealers standing at empty tables. Made me feel a little bad, because here it made me feel bad for those people as opposed to the people who are unemployed, because those are people who rely on tips and they're still considered gainfully employed. So they probably can't pay their bills all that much because they're sitting and they're employed, but they're not making as much money as they normally do. So it was a little depressing. I mean, I still had a great time, don't get me wrong, but it was, I feel for people like that. I feel for everybody right now. It's a tough time. But I'm happy for you, Barry, because it sounds like to me that you made a lot of smart decisions because a lot of wrestlers don't make smart decisions. Like it was hard to sell the house, but then you realized, I should get into real estate. I should have some other form of income other than what I'm, my career, or whatever that career might be at the time. So, I mean, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I didn't sell that. I actually rented the house out. So.
Oh, you did? That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you said that.
But I sold it. Yeah, I did end up selling it 2 years ago because the equity had gone up.
That's
Sure.
awesome. Yeah,
So
so
you-
smart.
It worked out, yeah. But it's like, I don't know if it's a smart decision, but just paying attention a little, I guess. And like you said, wrestlers don't always make the smartest decisions, right?
But you know what? You could still be in a small town doing a job you don't like, and that's actually sort of the point of Last Life Ever. It's not that I want to be in Ka or a wrestler, because I don't really. Jillian apparently does, as we learned at the beginning of the show. But you got to do what you wanted to do, and you still figured out a way to make it work for you. Well, still, that to me, that's the whole point. That the trick to life. I think it was one of our previous guests, Dr. Tony Parnells. He said that the trick to life was learning how to buy back your time, so you could do what you wanted to do with your time. And it sounds like that's what you're saying. You're like,